My father's face turned ash white when the lawyer slid the document across his mahogany desk, the same desk where he'd signed my disinheritance papers just 3 months earlier. "This can't be legal," he stammered, his Boston Brahmin accent suddenly thick with panic. His fingers trembled as he flipped through the pages that would strip away not just his fortune, but his carefully cultivated reputation in Massachusetts high society. The lawyer, my lawyer, smiled thinly. "I assure you, Mr. Caldwell, everything is perfectly legal. Your daughter simply found what you've been hiding for 30 years." Dad looked up at me then, really looked at me, for the first time since I'd walked away from the family business to start my own tech company. "Catherine," he whispered, "what have you done?" What I'd done was simple. I'd chosen my own path instead of the one carved out through 5 generations of Caldwell banking legacy. And somehow, that choice led me to discover the secret that would bring the entire Caldwell empire crashing down. Growing up Caldwell meant growing up with expectations heavier than the silver spoons we were born with. Our family has been fixtures of Boston's Back Bay since the 1850s, and my father, Richard Caldwell III, never let anyone forget it. Every summer at our Nantucket compound, every winter charity gala at the Copley Plaza Hotel, every Harvard alumni event, we were the family that represented old money, New England, at its finest. Mom was mostly ornamental in our family structure, a former debutante from Connecticut whose main purpose was organizing charity events and looking elegant. My older brother, Richard IV, we called him Richie, was the golden child, groomed since birth to take over Caldwell Finance. Then there was me, Catherine, the daughter whose only expected contribution to the family legacy was to marry well and produce more Caldwells. I remember when I was 14 and won the state science competition with my software project. Instead of celebrating, Dad looked annoyed during the award ceremony. "Catherine, this computer obsession is becoming concerning," he said on the drive home in his Bentley. "You'll never find a suitable husband if you keep acting like some sort of technician." Mom nodded in agreement, adding, "Darling, wouldn't debate club be more appropriate? You could meet the Prescott boy. His family has that lovely summer home in Martha's Vineyard." The summer I turned 16, Dad hosted our annual 4th of July party, a Caldwell tradition where Boston's elite gathered to network under the guise of patriotism. I'd spent the previous semester coding a portfolio management application and excitedly showed it to Dad's business partner. "Sir, this could modernize how Caldwell Financial handles client portfolios," I explained. His interest was genuine, and for a moment, I felt seen. Then Dad appeared, scotch in hand, laughing too loudly. "Don't mind Catherine and her little computer games. She'll outgrow it once she gets to Wellesley and meets the right sort of young man." The humiliation burned as he steered his colleague away, leaving me alone with my little computer game that could have revolutionized their business. Despite everything, I followed the expected path initially. I attended Wellesley College because generations of Caldwell women had done so. But instead of art history or literature, I majored in computer science and business, a constant source of tension at Sunday dinners. What respectable man wants to marry a woman who codes all day? Mom would sigh, while Dad would remind me that Caldwell women don't work, they manage households and serve on charity boards. By my senior year, I'd already launched my first startup. It was a modest success, enough to fund my MBA at Stanford, far from Boston and its suffocating expectations. Dad was furious. "Stanford? With all those tech people? Catherine, we've been going to Harvard for generations." That's when he made his first threat of disinheritance, a threat that would eventually become reality. The grand gesture that would change everything came unexpectedly during my second year at Stanford. I received a package from someone named Eleanor Reed, a name I didn't recognize. Inside was a collection of old letters, photographs, and a brief note. Your grandfather wanted you to have these when the time was right. I believe that time is now. The contents revealed a secret so profound, so contrary to the Caldwell mythos, that I couldn't believe it at first. But as I dug deeper, I realized I had stumbled upon the truth that would not only set me free, but potentially bring down the entire facade my father had spent his life maintaining. Fast forward to last December. I'd just sold my cybersecurity company to a major tech conglomerate, a $75 million deal that made headlines in both Silicon Valley and, much to my father's chagrin, the Boston Globe. For the first time in Caldwell history, someone had made a fortune outside the family business, and a woman no less. Despite our strained relationship, Mom insisted I come home for Christmas at the Beacon Hill townhouse. Your father is turning 65, Catherine. The entire Boston financial community will be there. Her voice carried that familiar mixture of command and plea that I'd grown immune to over the years. Still, something about Eleanor Reed's package had been gnawing at me. I needed answers that only my father could provide. I arrived in Boston during a classic New England blizzard. The townhouse was decorated to perfection. Garlands wrapped around the grand staircase, the 12-foot Fraser fir adorned with heirloom ornaments, and caterers bustling about preparing for the annual Caldwell Christmas Eve gala. Mom air-kissed my cheeks, immediately commenting on my casual California look with thinly veiled disapproval. Richie and his perfect Mayflower descendant wife Charlotte greeted me next, their twin boys dressed identically in little Brooks Brothers blazers. "Heard about your company sale, Kat," Richie said with a smirk. "Dad's furious you didn't offer Caldwell Financial first right of refusal on the deal. Could have kept it in the family." My father was holding court in his study when I entered, surrounded by his banking cronies, all sipping 30-year-old scotch. The conversation halted when I appeared. "Gentlemen, you remember my daughter," he said stiffly. "She's visiting from California, where she's been playing entrepreneur." The men chuckled indulgently. "Actually, Dad, I just sold my play business for $75 million, I replied evenly. The room grew uncomfortable as he forced a tight smile. "Catherine always had a flair for the dramatic," he deflected. "Excuse us, gentlemen." He guided me firmly into the hallway, his fingers digging into my arm. "What are you trying to prove? Coming in here embarrassing me in front of the board members?" "I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm just stating facts." His face reddened. "Facts? Let me tell you a fact. Your little tech venture might impress those California types, but here, legacy matters, tradition matters. The Caldwell name means something in this city." "Does it really, Dad? Or is it all built on carefully constructed lies?" I watched his expression shift subtly. "What are you talking about?" His voice had dropped dangerously low. "I met Eleanor Reed." I saw recognition flicker in his eyes before he masked it. "I don't know who that is," he lied smoothly, but a muscle twitched in his jaw, his tell since I was a child. The gala that evening was a testament to New England excess disguised as restraint. Old money never shouts, it whispers. 200 of Boston's elite mingled beneath crystal chandeliers, discussing investments, private school admissions, and summer plans for the Cape. I stood out in my sleek black pantsuit among the women in traditional cocktail dresses. Mom pulled me aside during the appetizer course. "Catherine, Senator Whitman's son is here. Harvard Law, single, from an excellent family. Do try to speak with him." When I didn't respond enthusiastically, she added, "Darling, your little tech adventure was amusing, but it's time to think about settling down properly. You're 34. "My little tech adventure just made me financially independent for life, Mom." "Money isn't everything, dear. Connection is everything. Legacy is everything." The tension escalated when Dad clinked his crystal glass for a toast. "Tonight, we celebrate family and future," he announced to the gathered guests. I'm proud to share that Caldwell Financial will be expanding its legacy with a new headquarters on State Street, and my son, Richard, will be taking over as CEO next quarter. Applause rippled through the room as Richie beamed. Dad continued, "The Caldwell name has stood for integrity and excellence in Boston finance for 5 generations. We've managed the wealth of this city's finest families through depressions, recessions, and booms because we understand something crucial. Tradition matters." His gaze found me across the room. Some may chase trendy new ventures, but we Caldwells know that true success comes from honoring the foundations built by those who came before us. The implication was clear to everyone present. I was the family disappointment, the cautionary tale. Several guests glanced uncomfortably in my direction. As dinner progressed, I excused myself to use the restroom, but instead slipped into Gad's study. I knew exactly what I was looking for, confirmation of what Eleanor Reed had shared. I needed just one more piece of evidence before I could act. As I carefully searched through his desk drawer, the door suddenly opened. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" My father stood in the doorway, face flushed with anger and too much scotch. "Going through my private papers at a family event? This is beyond inappropriate, even for you." "I'm looking for the truth, Dad, about grandfather, about how the Caldwell fortune really began." His face drained of color. "Get out. Now. Not until you admit what Eleanor told me is true." He stepped closer, voice barely above a whisper. "Listen to me very carefully, Catherine. Whatever nonsense this woman has filled your head with is irrelevant. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with my attorneys to formalize your removal from the Caldwell Trust and will. You've made your choice to turn your back on this family, so you can live with the consequences." "Is that what grandfather did? Live with the consequences of his choices?" I challenged. For a moment, something like fear flickered across his face. Then, his mask of patrician control returned. "You're making a grave mistake. When your little tech bubble bursts, don't come crawling back to the family you've betrayed." We returned to the party separately, the battle lines clearly drawn. What my father didn't realize was that I wasn't just prepared for war, I had already secured the nuclear option. The breaking point came 3 weeks later at the annual Caldwell Financial Investors Meeting. Traditionally a formality where the family showcased its success to wealthy clients, this year it would serve as Richie's coronation as the new CEO. I hadn't planned to attend until Mom called. "Your father is announcing some changes to the family trust. If you have any hope of reconciliation, you need to be there." Her voice had an unusual edge of concern. "Catherine, please, family matters more than pride." The meeting was held in the grand ballroom of the Boston Harbor Hotel, overlooking the water where Caldwell ships once docked with cargo from around the world, or so the family legend went. Nearly 300 people filled the room, clients, partners, financial press, and Boston society fixtures. I slipped in just as my father took the podium, commanding the room with the ease of generational privilege. For 170 years, the Caldwell name has been synonymous with financial excellence and integrity, he began, his voice carrying the distinctive Brahmin accent that had faded from most Bostonians except the oldest families. Today, we honor that legacy by ensuring its continuation for generations to come. From my position near the back, I watched him weave the familiar mythology, how my great-great-grandfather built a shipping empire during the Civil War, how my grandfather transformed it into a banking powerhouse during the Depression, all through hard work, impeccable ethics, and unwavering commitment to Boston's prosperity. As he introduced Richie as the new CEO, I moved quietly toward the side of the room where a young woman waited, my lawyer, Jessica Chen, a Harvard Law graduate who had turned down Caldwell Financial's job offer years ago to represent tech entrepreneurs instead. She handed me a folder with a slight nod. "And now," my father continued, "I would like to announce some changes to the Caldwell Family Trust, which has preserved our legacy for generations." This was my cue. I walked deliberately toward the stage, my heels echoing on the hardwood floor. The crowd parted, murmurs rippling through the room. My father faltered mid-sentence when he saw me approaching. "Catherine, this is hardly the time," he hissed when I reached the podium. "Actually, Dad, this is exactly the time." I turned to face the audience. "For those who don't know me, I'm Catherine Caldwell, Richard's daughter. I've spent the last decade building a tech company instead of joining the family business, which makes me something of an outsider. But sometimes it takes an outsider to see the truth." My father tried to reach for the microphone, but I held firm. The Caldwell legacy my father speaks of so proudly, it's built on a lie. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Our family fortune didn't come from Civil War shipping contracts. It came from selling opium to China and then laundering the money through Boston real estate. The room erupted in shocked whispers. My father's face turned crimson. "This is absurd. Security, please remove my daughter." "Before you do," I continued, raising my voice, "you should know I have proof. My grandfather, the legendary William Caldwell, who supposedly saved this company during the Depression, left evidence of the truth with his longtime mistress, Eleanor Reed." I opened the folder Jessica had given me. "I have the original accounting books showing how Caldwell ships transported opium to China and laundered the profits through property purchases in Back Bay, the very properties that form the core of Caldwell Financial's real estate portfolio today. I have letters between my great-grandfather and Chinese officials he bribed. And most damning of all, I have grandfather's confession written before his death, which he entrusted to Eleanor because he knew his son, my father, would destroy it to protect the family name." Two security guards approached uncertainly, looking to my father for direction. The crowd was completely silent now, reporters frantically taking notes. "But that's not all," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "For the past month, I've had forensic accountants reviewing Caldwell Financial's current practices. They've uncovered evidence of modern-day money laundering through offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. The SEC has been notified, and I've provided them with complete documentation." My father lunged for me then, his composure finally shattered. "You ungrateful!" Richie pulled him back, his own face pale with shock. I faced the stunned crowd one last time. "I'm not doing this out of revenge. I'm doing it because integrity actually matters. The Caldwell name has been a lie for generations, and it's time for the truth." I placed the folder on the podium. "I've provided copies of all documentation to the financial press and relevant authorities." As I walked off the stage, the room exploded into chaos. Clients demanded answers, reporters shouted questions, and board members huddled in panicked groups. Through it all, my father stood frozen at the podium, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. Jessica met me at the exit. "The SEC agents are waiting outside," she confirmed quietly. As I left, I caught a final glimpse of my father. For the first time in my life, I saw something I'd never seen before: fear in Richard Caldwell III's eyes as he realized he could no longer control the narrative. The aftermath was swift and merciless. By that evening, Caldwell Financial stock had plummeted 30%. CNBC ran breaking news segments with the headline, "Boston Banking Dynasty Built on Opium Trade." The Wall Street Journal published a front-page exposé. Within 48 hours, the SEC had frozen several Caldwell Financial accounts pending investigation. Major clients were jumping ship, and my father had become a pariah in the very social circles where he'd once reigned supreme. I retreated to my hotel room, ignoring the barrage of calls and texts from family members, ranging from furious, Richie, to devastated, Mom. The only message I answered came from an unexpected source. My Aunt Margaret, Dad's younger sister, who'd been effectively exiled from family gatherings years ago after marrying a new money tech entrepreneur from Seattle. I always knew there was something rotten at the core of Dad's story, she told me over coffee the next morning at a quiet cafe in Cambridge. He sent me to therapy when I started asking questions about grandfather's past. Eventually, I just gave up and moved across the country. Did you know about Eleanor? I asked. Margaret nodded. I met her once, accidentally. Dad nearly had a heart attack when he found out. That's when the threats about cutting me off began. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. What you did took incredible courage, Catherine, but are you ready for what comes next? What came next was a Category 5 hurricane of legal proceedings, media scrutiny, and family implosion. 3 days after the investors' meeting, I received a call from Mom's oldest friend, Caroline Wellington. Catherine, your mother needs you. She's not well. Your father hasn't spoken to her since everything happened. She's staying at my house in Brookline. I found Mom sitting in Caroline's sunroom, looking 10 years older than she had at Christmas. When she saw me, she didn't rage as I'd expected. Instead, she simply asked, "Did you know this would destroy everything?" "I knew it would bring out the truth," I answered honestly. "The truth?" she repeated hollowly. "Do you know what the truth is costing me? My home, my position on every board I've served on for 30 years, my friends, most won't even take my calls now." "I'm sorry, Mom, I truly am, but Dad left me no choice." She looked up sharply. "There's always a choice, Catherine." "Like the choice you made to ignore what our family fortune was built on, or the choice to value appearance over integrity? Or maybe the choice to treat me like a disappointment my entire life because I wanted to build something of my own?" For the first time in my memory, my mother seemed to really see me. "I never thought you were a disappointment," she said quietly. "I was afraid for you. The path you chose is so much harder than the one laid out for you." "Harder, but honest," I replied. Our reconciliation wasn't instant or complete, but it was a beginning. Mom revealed that she'd had her own suspicions about the family history for years, but had chosen willful ignorance. "Your father said knowing too much would only hurt us all." I believed him. 2 weeks later came the moment that would bring this saga to its climax. My lawyer arranged a meeting with my father and his legal team at their offices downtown. I arrived first, prepared for battle. When Dad walked in, the change in him was shocking. The commanding presence had diminished. He looked older, defeated. His lawyer, Bernard Harrington, a family friend for decades, looked equally grim. "We're prepared to offer a settlement," Harrington began without preamble. "In exchange for your cooperation with the SEC investigation and your public retraction of certain historical claims, Caldwell Financial will—" "I'm not interested in a settlement," I interrupted. "I'm here because I have a proposition." I nodded to Jessica, who slid a document across the table. "What's this?" my father asked suspiciously. "It's a restructuring plan for Caldwell Financial. I've spent the past 2 weeks working with financial and ethical compliance experts to create a path forward. It includes full disclosure of the historical truth, reparations to organizations fighting opium addiction in Chinese communities, divestment from all questionable offshore activities, and a complete leadership overhaul." My father stared at me incredulously. "You expect me to hand over my company to you?" "Not to me. To a board of independent directors, including financial ethics specialists and community representatives. You'll step down, but the Caldwell name can survive, just with the truth attached to it this time." As he flipped through the document, the color drained from his face. He'd clearly expected me to demand money, not reform. This would destroy everything I've built. "No, Dad, it would transform it into something actually worth preserving." The negotiation lasted hours. My father fought every point, but his position weakened with each counter-argument Jessica and I presented. The final blow came when she placed a USB drive on the table. This contains Eleanor Reed's complete records, including your father's handwritten confession about the origins of the family fortune. We're prepared to release it to the New York Times tomorrow unless we reach an agreement today. My father's lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. Finally, Dad looked up at me, his expression unreadable. "Why are you doing this? Why not just let it all burn? God knows I gave you enough reason to." Because despite everything, I am a Caldwell, just not the kind you wanted me to be. After 7 grueling hours, he signed the agreement. As his pen scratched across the final page, he muttered, "Your grandfather would have respected this move, even while hating it. You're more like him than you know." In the months that followed, Caldwell Financial underwent a painful but necessary transformation. The company publicly acknowledged its opium trade origins and established a $50 million foundation for addiction treatment programs. The offshore accounts were closed, with all funds repatriated and properly taxed. A new board took control, with a mandate for ethical investing and transparency. The family dynamics shifted too. Richie, initially furious, eventually came around when he realized I'd saved the company from complete collapse. "You could have buried us all," he admitted during a tense dinner 6 months later. "Instead, you forced us to become better." Mom found her own voice in the aftermath, filing for divorce from my father and establishing a foundation supporting women entrepreneurs in New England. "I spent 40 years being Richard Caldwell's wife," she told me. "I'd like to spend whatever time I have left being Margaret Caldwell." As for Eleanor Reed, I finally met her in person, a dignified woman in her 80s living quietly in a modest Cambridge apartment. "Your grandfather was deeply flawed," she told me over tea, "but he wanted to make amends in the end. He would be proud that you found the courage he lacked." The unexpected twist came a year after the confrontation. While cleaning out my father's home office after he downsized to a condo, I discovered a hidden compartment in his desk containing a journal, my grandfather's private thoughts that even Eleanor hadn't seen. In it, he detailed not just his guilt about the family's origins, but his plan for redemption that was never realized. The final entry, dated just before his death, read, "I've failed to right our family's wrongs in my lifetime. Perhaps a future Caldwell will have more courage than I did." Without realizing it, I had fulfilled my grandfather's dying wish. In breaking with tradition, I had honored the best parts of my family legacy after all. Looking back now, 3 years later, I realize that inheritance comes in many forms. My father didn't leave me his money. He left me his determination and cunning. My grandfather didn't leave me his business. He left me his hidden conscience and unfinished redemption. Together, they gave me the tools to forge something new from the broken pieces of our family legacy. Caldwell Financial still exists, though in a vastly different form. Dad retired to Florida, where he rarely speaks to any of us. Mom has found a surprising second chapter as a mentor to women in business. And me? I've learned that sometimes the greatest act of loyalty to your family isn't preserving their secrets, but demanding they live up to their potential. If you're facing your own moment of truth with family, remember that breaking tradition doesn't mean breaking family. Sometimes it means rebuilding it on a stronger foundation. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe for more real-life family dramas and leave a comment sharing your own experience with family expectations. Remember, your legacy isn't what you're given, it's what you choose to do with it.